Catalina, a hard-working housemaid with dreams of a better life, finds herself caught in the cruel schemes of her wealthy employer, Sylvia. Invited to a luxurious party with the hidden agenda of public humiliation, Catalina is thrust into a situation meant to degrade her. But when she takes the microphone, the unexpected happens. Her voice captivates the entire room, turning Sylvia's plan on its head. The party becomes a turning point, sparking a series of events that propel Catalina toward a surprising opportunity in the music industry. As Catalina's star begins to rise, Sylvia's envy turns into a relentless campaign to destroy her, uncovering a dark secret from Catalina's past. The story shifts as Catalina, now facing public scrutiny and threats, must fight to clear her name and protect her son. With the support of loyal friends, she embarks on a journey of resilience, determined to expose the truth about Sylvia and reclaim her dignity. The battle is tough, but Catalina's determination shines through, leading to a public showdown that finally reveals the true villain. The story comes full circle as Catalina not only clears her name but also triumphs over the very person who sought to bring her down, finding both justice and a renewed sense of hope for her future. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell to avoid missing any videos. In a world of opulence and cold-hearted arrogance, a wealthy socialite devised a cruel plan to degrade the very woman who diligently served her. Sylvia, a multimillionaire basking in the glow of her extravagant life, decided to extend an unexpected invitation to her humble housemaid, Catalina, for an exclusive, high-society event. The invitation, however, was tainted with malice, as Sylvia intended to publicly disgrace Catalina, turning her into a spectacle for her elite guests. Yet, as fate would have it, the tables turned in the most unexpected way, leaving the attendees in utter disbelief when the maid, with quiet dignity, stepped up to the microphone. Sylvia's day began in her palatial bedroom, adorned with priceless art and luxurious furnishings. Wrapped in a silk robe, she admired her reflection in the mirror, her eyes filled with self-adoration. Her mornings were a lavish ritual, a testament to her vanity, consuming hours in pampering herself with the finest beauty treatments. Meanwhile, far from the glitz and glamour, Catalina's day began in stark contrast. She rose before dawn in her modest, small apartment on the city's outskirts, a space devoid of luxury but rich in love and resilience. She lovingly prepared breakfast for her young son, Juan, who smiled up at her as she kissed his forehead before school. Catalina then boarded the crowded bus, navigating the daily grind with unwavering determination, despite the weariness that clung to her bones. Arriving at Sylvia's grand mansion, Catalina entered through the back door, as she did every day. The kitchen gleamed with perfection, yet she knew the day would demand much more from her. As she gathered her cleaning supplies, Sylvia's sharp, demanding voice cut through the air, summoning her with impatience. "Catalina, come here immediately." Sylvia's tone was laced with disdain, as she listed off her expectations for the day. Clean every window, vacuum the carpets thoroughly, ensuring no trace of dust remained. "Yes, Mrs. Sylvia," Catalina replied with a polite smile, though her heart was heavy and her hands trembled slightly. As Catalina diligently set to work, Sylvia's attention was captured by a phone call from her equally affluent friend, Marcella. Their conversation revolved around the upcoming birthday party, an affair destined to be the talk of the town. Sylvia relished the opportunity to flaunt her wealth and status, gushing about the exquisite decorations and the divine buffet she had arranged, all while blatantly ignoring Catalina, who scrubbed the floors at her feet. Though Catalina worked tirelessly, her thoughts wandered to her son and the dreams she held close to her heart, dreams that seemed painfully out of reach, yet fueled her resolve to keep pushing forward, no matter how insurmountable the obstacles appeared. During a brief lunch break, Catalina sat alone in the kitchen, savoring a simple sandwich. These moments of solitude allowed her to reflect on her life, and sometimes she dared to dream of singing again, a talent she had buried under the weight of life's hardships. Meanwhile, Sylvia remained engrossed in the superficial details of her party, her mind consumed with how others would perceive her. When she found Catalina taking a moment to eat, Sylvia's reprimand was swift. Shouldn't you be working now, Catalina? The party is approaching, and this house needs to be perfect. Catalina quickly apologized, standing up to resume her tasks, hiding her fatigue behind a forced smile. Sylvia, in the living room, flipped through a catalog of ostentatious decorations, plotting how to make her birthday party the most talked-about event of the year. Yet, amidst her grandiose plans, she harbored a sinister intention, a desire to publicly humiliate Catalina in a manner that no one would forget. Calling Catalina into the room with an authoritative tone, Sylvia barely lifted her eyes from the catalog as she delivered her next command. "Catalina, come here. I need to talk to you," she said, her voice cold and calculating. Catalina, ever obedient, entered the room cautiously, her hands nervously wiping on her apron. The uneasy feeling in her chest grew as Sylvia fixed her with a smile that sent chills down her spine. "Yes, Mrs. Sylvia?" Catalina asked, bracing herself. Sylvia's smile turned into a smirk as she revealed her plan. "I'm planning my birthday party, and I've decided that you and your son Juan are invited. I want you both to be there," she said, her eyes glinting with a malicious intent that Catalina couldn't quite decipher. Catalina, shocked and suspicious, hesitated. She had never been invited to anything beyond her daily duties. "Ma'am, I don't know if it would be appropriate. Juan and I don't have the right clothes for a party like that," she replied, her voice uncertain. But Sylvia, feigning generosity, dismissed her concerns with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't worry about that, Catalina. I'm sure you can manage something. After all, you're a part of my life in a way, aren't you?" she said, leaving Catalina with little choice but to accept, despite the unease gnawing at her. Refusing could jeopardize her job, and she didn't want to disappoint Juan, who would undoubtedly be excited at the prospect of attending a party. Satisfied with Catalina's reluctant acceptance, Sylvia turned her attention back to the catalog, her mind already envisioning the moment of humiliation she had so carefully orchestrated. But little did she know that the events that would unfold at the party would not go according to her cruel plan, leading to a shocking twist that would leave everyone, including Sylvia herself, utterly astonished. Catalina was taken aback by the unexpected invitation, a gesture that was far from the norm in her life of routine tasks and unacknowledged efforts. Never before had she been asked to participate in anything beyond her daily duties. With a wary glance, she studied Sylvia, trying to decipher the true intent behind this sudden generosity. "Ma'am, I'm not sure this is appropriate. Juan and I don't have the right clothes for a party like that," Catalina cautiously responded, her voice tinged with uncertainty. But Sylvia, with a smile that feigned warmth, brushed aside her concerns. "Oh, don't worry about that, Catalina. I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, you're part of my life in a way, aren't you?" Sylvia's words left Catalina cornered, feeling she had little choice but to accept. She knew that declining could stir trouble at work, and she didn't want to dampen Juan's excitement, knowing how much he would relish the chance to attend a grand party. In the following days, the invitation weighed heavily on Catalina's mind. She shared her unease with a close friend during a bus ride, seeking advice. Her friend encouraged her to attend, suggesting that she make the most of the opportunity despite her lingering doubts. Though still skeptical, Catalina resolved to do her best, ensuring that both she and Juan would be presentable for the event. Meanwhile, Sylvia threw herself into the party preparations with renewed enthusiasm, her anticipation fueled by the prospect of seeing her cruel plan come to fruition. As the big day approached, Juan's excitement grew palpable. "Mom, are we going to a party?" he asked, his eyes wide with wonder as he helped Catalina choose their most respectable attire. "Yes, son, we'll do our best to enjoy it," Catalina reassured him, though her heart was heavy with unease. When the day finally arrived, Sylvia was overjoyed. The mansion was transformed into a scene of pure extravagance, with glittering lights, exotic floral arrangements, and a buffet spread that could rival the finest palaces. Guests began to arrive, each more impeccably dressed than the last. Sylvia floated among them, basking in the compliments on her flawless execution of the event. Catalina and Juan arrived a bit later, their simple yet neat clothing contrasting sharply with the opulence surrounding them. As soon as they stepped inside, they felt the weight of numerous eyes upon them. Some guests whispered among themselves, surprised to see the housemaid and her son at such a grand affair. Spotting Catalina, Sylvia wasted no time in approaching her with an overly bright smile. She gently took Catalina by the arm and guided her into the throng. "Catalina, Juan, I'm so glad you came. Let me introduce you to my friends," Sylvia said, her tone laced with a subtle condescension that made Catalina's discomfort grow. Trying to keep her composure, Catalina felt out of place in this world of luxury. Juan, however, was captivated by the splendor of the party, his young eyes wide with wonder. Sylvia made it a point to introduce them to everyone, always making sure to underscore the fact that they were the unexpected guests, Catalina, the maid, and her son. "This is my little secret, Catalina. She takes care of the whole house with such dedication," Sylvia remarked to a cluster of guests, who responded with polite laughter. Catalina forced a smile, though each of Sylvia's words cut deeper, confirming the humiliating purpose behind the invitation. As the evening wore on, the tension within Catalina grew, though she did her best to mask it. Her son, sensing her unease, held her hand tightly, offering her silent comfort. Grateful for his support, Catalina braced herself for whatever humiliating spectacle Sylvia had planned, knowing that the worst was yet to come. Catalina, though overwhelmed with unease, remained close to Juan, doing her best to find some enjoyment in the evening despite the ever-growing sense of dread that gnawed at her. The lavish party was in full swing, with vibrant music filling the air, laughter bubbling among the guests, and an array of gourmet delicacies being savored. Amidst this whirlwind of luxury, Catalina and Juan kept to themselves, tucked away in a quiet corner, hoping to go unnoticed. Juan's eyes sparkled with wonder at the splendor around him, while Catalina forced a calm smile, trying to mask the anxiety building inside her. Unbeknownst to her, Sylvia had been watching them closely from a distance, her mind fixed on the cruel plan she was about to execute. Waiting for the perfect moment, Sylvia elegantly tapped a champagne glass with a silver spoon, capturing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for a special moment," she announced with a broad, insincere smile as the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. Catalina's heart sank when she realized Sylvia was staring directly at her. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she braced herself, though nothing could have prepared her for the public humiliation that was about to unfold. "As many of you know, my dear cleaning lady Catalina and her son Juan are with us this evening. Catalina is more than just an employee. She's practically part of the family. And as a gesture of my appreciation, I'd like to ask her to share her special talent with us. Catalina, would you be so kind as to sing for us?" Sylvia's voice dripped with faux sweetness, barely concealing the malice beneath. The room went silent, and all eyes turned to Catalina, who stood frozen, paralyzed by the unexpected request. Juan, sensing his mother's fear, whispered to her with a mix of surprise and encouragement, "Mom, you can sing. I know you can." His innocent words gave Catalina the strength she needed, her love for her son outweighing her fear of humiliation. With a shaky smile meant to reassure Juan, she nodded, "Okay, I'll sing." Slowly, Catalina rose and walked to the center of the room, where a microphone awaited her. Sylvia watched with a gleam of satisfaction, fully expecting Catalina to crumble under the pressure. Catalina took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of nerves raging inside her. She closed her eyes briefly, recalling the lullabies she used to sing to Juan when he was just a baby, a memory that filled her with a quiet resolve. When she opened her eyes again, she was ready. As she began to sing, her voice, a soft, melodious current, filled the room, washing over the guests. At first, they listened with mild curiosity, but as Catalina's voice grew stronger, full of emotion and beauty, the room fell completely silent. The guests, who had expected an awkward display, found themselves entranced by the unexpected talent before them. Sylvia, who had anticipated ridicule and laughter, was left stunned, watching in disbelief as her guests were captivated by the very woman she had sought to demean. When Catalina finished, the room erupted in applause. She opened her eyes, tears of emotion welling up as she absorbed the unexpected reaction. "That was incredible," one guest exclaimed as they approached her. "You have an extraordinary gift." Among the crowd, a middle-aged man who exuded confidence stepped forward. "My name is Alejandro. I work in the music industry. Catalina, your voice is remarkable. I would love to discuss an opportunity with you," he said, extending his hand. Catalina, still reeling from the whirlwind of emotions, hesitantly shook his hand, feeling a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and a lingering suspicion, aware that this moment had only come because Sylvia had intended to shame her. Sylvia, on the other hand, seethed with fury, though she masked her anger behind a tight, forced smile. "Of course, Catalina, you deserve this. Let's sit down with Alejandro and talk," she said, guiding them to a quieter spot. As they spoke, Alejandro showered Catalina with praise, discussing how he could help her launch a music career. Overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her fortunes, Catalina felt a flicker of hope, a sensation she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. "I'm not sure what to say. Thank you, Mr. Alejandro. I never dreamed something like this could happen to me." Alejandro smiled warmly. "Your talent is truly special, Catalina. The world deserves to hear it." Sylvia, realizing her meticulously crafted scheme had backfired spectacularly, struggled to maintain her composure. On the outside, she forced herself to smile, to mingle, to keep up appearances among her guests. But inside, she was seething with a fury so intense it threatened to consume her. Meanwhile, Catalina, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, experienced a taste of victory. Against all odds, her hidden talent had not only survived Sylvia's cruel intentions but had flourished, turning the tide in her favor. As the party continued, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Guests who once overlooked Catalina now approached her with admiration, their earlier indifference replaced with genuine respect. Sylvia's plan to disgrace Catalina had inadvertently transformed into a moment of personal triumph for the humble maid. However, Sylvia's vengeful spirit was far from subdued. Even as she maintained her social facade, her mind raced, plotting her next move. She was determined to reclaim control and exact her revenge, whatever the cost. "Let's go home, Juan. It's been a long night," Catalina said, gently squeezing her son's hand as they bid farewell to the guests. Juan looked up at her, his face glowing with pride. "Mom, you were amazing. I'm so proud of you," he exclaimed, his voice full of admiration. As they left the mansion, Catalina felt a profound sense of relief wash over her. The burden she had carried for so long seemed lighter now. She was aware that more challenges lay ahead, especially with Sylvia lurking in the background. But she also knew she had gained something invaluable: her dignity, her son's unwavering love, and perhaps a new path to a brighter future. The next morning, Catalina awoke with an unfamiliar lightness in her heart. The dread that had become her constant companion was replaced by a burgeoning sense of hope. Her usually quiet phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls. Among them were several voice messages from Alejandro, the music producer, who was eager to meet and discuss the details of a potential contract. Catalina could hardly believe the turn her life was taking. "Mom, what's going on? Why is your phone buzzing so much?" Juan asked, his curiosity piqued. "I think it's about last night's party, Juan. It seems people liked my singing, and Mr. Alejandro wants to help me share it with more people," she replied, her voice tinged with a cautious yet hopeful excitement. In the days that followed, Catalina met with Alejandro several times. He introduced her to other professionals in the music industry, and soon she found herself rehearsing for her first public performances. Initially, these events were small, but they quickly began to grow in scale and significance. Catalina felt as though she were living in a dream, yet she remained mindful of her responsibilities, determined to stay grounded for Juan's sake. "Mom, are you going to sing again tonight?" Juan asked eagerly. "Yes, dear, and you're coming with me. We go everywhere together," she replied, gently caressing his face. Catalina's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The modest invitations she initially received blossomed into larger, more prestigious opportunities, and soon her name was being recognized throughout the city. With her newfound success, she was able to move into a better apartment where Juan had his room and space to play. Despite the drastic changes, Catalina remained humble and deeply grateful for every blessing. "We'll never forget where we came from, Juan. Everything we do is for our future, but we'll always stay true to who we are," she told him, instilling the values she held dear. As Catalina's star continued to rise, Sylvia's envy festered. Whenever they crossed paths, whether on the street or at social gatherings, Catalina could sense the bitter resentment in Sylvia's gaze. Sylvia, on the other hand, was consumed with anger, watching in disbelief as someone she considered beneath her continued to ascend. The tension between them was thick and palpable, and everyone around them could sense that a confrontation was inevitable. Unable to cope with Catalina's success, Sylvia found herself pacing anxiously around her grand home, unable to sleep. Each new milestone in Catalina's career was like a dagger to her pride. "This can't go on like this. Catalina can't be the one to come out on top. I have to do something," Sylvia muttered to herself, her reflection in the mirror a stark reminder of her burning need for revenge. Sylvia's growing rage soon crystallized into a decision. She would sabotage Catalina's newfound success. The idea of hiring a private detective took root during a conversation with her equally wealthy and conniving friend, Marcella. "Sylvia, you have to be smart about this. Everyone has a skeleton in their closet. Find something you can use against her," Marcella suggested, her voice dripping with malice. "You're right. I'm going to uncover something that will shatter that facade of hers." Sylvia agreed, her voice cold with determination. Without delay, Sylvia hired one of the best private detectives in the city, instructing him to dig into every aspect of Catalina's life. She was determined to find something, anything, that could be used to destroy the reputation Catalina had so painstakingly built, and she wouldn't stop until she had regained the upper hand. As Sylvia continued to maintain her facade of kindness in public, she never missed an opportunity to deliver backhanded compliments to Catalina, each one laced with venomous sarcasm. "Catalina, you're simply amazing. Who would have ever guessed you had such hidden talent?" Sylvia would say, her smile forced and her eyes cold, the insincerity in her words barely concealed. Catalina, although graciously accepting the compliments, couldn't ignore the growing tension that seemed to hover in every encounter with Sylvia. Something was unsettling in the way Sylvia observed her, a predatory gleam in her eyes that sent a shiver down Catalina's spine. But Catalina remained steadfast, keeping her focus on her blossoming career and her unwavering commitment to providing a better life for her son, Juan. Juan, perceptive beyond his years, sensed the unease between his mother and Sylvia. "Mom, why is Mrs. Sylvia always around? Doesn't she like you?" he asked one evening, his innocent eyes full of concern. Catalina, determined to protect her son from the darker realities of the situation, gently reassured him. "Don't worry about that, my love. Some people find it hard to be happy for others' success. But we won't let that stop us. Will we?" she said, stroking his hair with a smile that hid her fears. The tension between Catalina and Sylvia was nearing its breaking point. As Catalina's star continued to rise, Sylvia grew more desperate. She was determined to uncover something, anything that could bring Catalina down. Meanwhile, Catalina, unaware of the impending storm, continued to push forward, her confidence growing with each new opportunity. But Sylvia's malice knew no bounds, and she was preparing to use the information her detective had gathered to deliver a crushing blow to Catalina's life and career. After days of relentless investigation, the detective Sylvia had hired finally returned with what he believed was the key to Catalina's downfall. Sitting across from Sylvia, he laid out the details of a long-buried secret. Years ago, Catalina was accused of theft. She was working as a maid in a wealthy household when she was charged with stealing valuable jewelry. The evidence mysteriously vanished, and the case was never resolved, the detective explained, his voice low and conspiratorial as he handed Sylvia a dossier filled with incriminating details. Sylvia's eyes lit up with a malevolent glee as she absorbed the information. "This is perfect," she murmured, a wicked smile curling her lips. "I'm going to expose this secret and destroy her once and for all." Sylvia began to meticulously craft her plan, knowing that she had to strike in a way that would leave Catalina defenseless. She carefully orchestrated a press conference, ensuring that every detail was in place to maximize the damage to Catalina's reputation. "I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about her," Sylvia muttered to herself, her voice dripping with spite as she reviewed the final preparations. The day of the press conference arrived, and Sylvia took the stage with a sense of triumph radiating from her. The room was packed with eager journalists, their cameras and microphones ready to capture every word. "Today, I stand before you to reveal a shocking truth about Catalina, the singer who has captivated so many," Sylvia began, her tone grave and authoritative. Catalina, watching the live broadcast from home, felt her heart plummet. She knew what was coming, and the dread she had kept at bay for so long now threatened to overwhelm her. The memories of that painful chapter in her life flooded back, an unjust accusation that had almost destroyed her. But now, to have it exposed so publicly was beyond devastating. "Mom, what's happening?" Juan's small voice broke through her spiraling thoughts, his face etched with worry. Catalina, tears welling in her eyes, struggled to find the words. "They're talking about something that happened a long time ago, Juan. It wasn't true then, and it isn't true now. But people might believe it," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of what was unfolding. As Sylvia continued her merciless exposé, she detailed how a young and desperate Catalina had been accused of stealing from the wealthy family she worked for, how the evidence had mysteriously disappeared, and how the stain of that accusation had never quite washed away. The media, quick to pounce on a scandal, began to question Catalina's integrity, and social media was soon ablaze with speculation and judgment. Everything Catalina had built, all the progress she had made, seemed to be unraveling before her eyes. But despite the despair clawing at her, Catalina knew she couldn't afford to give up. She looked at Juan, who was watching her with a mix of fear and trust, and she felt a surge of determination. "I won't let this destroy us, Juan. We'll prove the truth," she vowed, steeling herself for the battle ahead. She understood that this was only the beginning of a new conflict, one that would test her resilience and resolve more than anything before. While Sylvia reveled in what she believed to be her ultimate victory, Catalina prepared herself for the most important fight of her life, to clear her name, protect her son, and reclaim the future that Sylvia was so intent on stealing from her. She knew the truth was on her side, but the fight against public opinion and Sylvia's machinations would be fierce, and she would need every ounce of strength to prevail. The aftermath of the press conference was nothing short of catastrophic for Catalina. The theft accusations hurled against her spread like wildfire, infiltrating every corner of the media and social networks. By the next morning, her phone was inundated with a barrage of messages and missed calls, all centered around her alleged criminal past. As she skimmed through the countless notifications, a knot tightened in her stomach. "Mom, why are people saying such awful things about you?" Juan's innocent voice broke the silence, his wide eyes filled with concern. Catalina, swallowing her rising fear, tried to reassure him. "They're talking about something that happened a long time ago, son. It's not true, but I promise you, everything will be okay," she said, her voice steady even as she felt the sting of the injustice threatening to overwhelm her. Catalina knew she had to act swiftly. She reached out to Alejandro and other colleagues in the music industry, desperately trying to explain the situation and rally their support. But the response she received was far from what she had hoped. Contracts were abruptly canceled, invitations were withdrawn, and companies, eager to distance themselves from the scandal, began severing ties with her. "Alejandro, please, you have to believe me. I didn't do any of those things," Catalina pleaded during a tense phone call. Alejandro's voice, usually warm, was now tinged with discomfort. "Catalina, I do believe you, but the pressure is intense. People are talking and companies are scared. We need time to sort this out," he replied, his hesitation cutting through her like a knife. The crushing weight of injustice pressed down on Catalina, threatening to suffocate her. Everything she had painstakingly built was crumbling because of a lie she had already fought to overcome once before. She glanced at Juan, who was innocently playing in the corner, blissfully unaware of the turmoil swirling around them. Catalina knew she couldn't afford to falter now. She had to fight not only for herself but for her son's future as well. "I won't let this destroy us, Juan. We'll find a way to prove the truth," she vowed silently, steeling herself against the growing storm. But the tide of public opinion was relentless. Social media was awash with cruel comments, and many who had once supported her now turned away, their faith shaken by the relentless barrage of accusations. Catalina felt increasingly isolated, desperation gnawing at her resolve. Yet, deep within her, a spark of determination refused to be extinguished. She knew she had to act fast to clear her name and reclaim her life. With renewed resolve, she arranged an exclusive interview with a respected journalist, determined to tell her side of the story and win back the public's trust. During the interview, Catalina opened up about the theft accusation, explaining how it had been nothing more than a terrible misunderstanding that had almost shattered her life. "I was young and vulnerable. I was accused unjustly, but the evidence disappeared because I was innocent. I never stole anything," she said, tears glistening in her eyes as she spoke directly into the camera, her voice laced with raw emotion. Despite her heartfelt plea and the journalist's support, Sylvia remained one step ahead. Almost immediately after the interview aired, Sylvia released a fresh wave of documents and manipulated testimonies, further entrenching the narrative that Catalina was a thief. Public opinion, already teetering, began to shift decisively against Catalina once more. "She's lying. We can't trust her," declared one commentator on a heated TV debate show, his words a dagger to Catalina's already wounded spirit. As the days dragged on, the weight of despair grew heavier. Catalina's followers on social media dwindled, job offers vanished, and the bills began piling up. The future, once so bright, now seemed clouded in uncertainty. Yet, even as everything seemed to be slipping away, Catalina clung to her resolve. She couldn't let Sylvia win. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Juan asked, his small voice trembling with the tension he sensed but didn't fully understand. Catalina pulled him close, her heart aching with the burden she carried. "Yes, son, we'll be fine. I promise I won't give up," she whispered fiercely, determined to shield him from the harsh reality. Catalina began her investigation, combing through old documents, reaching out to people who might remember the incident, and desperately seeking any piece of evidence that could vindicate her. Every step was met with resistance. Every lead seemed to fizzle out, but her determination never faltered. Each discovery, no matter how small, was a step closer to the truth, a truth she was determined to bring to light. "I will prove my innocence, no matter what it takes," Catalina vowed to herself, her nights consumed by the tireless review of old records and the relentless pursuit of justice. The battle was grueling and felt as if it would stretch on forever, but Catalina's resolve never wavered. She knew the truth was her ally, and it was only a matter of uncovering the irrefutable evidence that would turn the tide in her favor. One afternoon, she decided to enlist the help of the few loyal friends who had always believed in her innocence. They met discreetly in a small, quiet cafe, far from prying eyes. Among her confidants were Laura, a former colleague who had witnessed firsthand Catalina's integrity, and Ricardo, a seasoned lawyer who had always stood by her side. "Laura, Ricardo, I'm desperate. Sylvia is tearing my life apart, and the only way to stop her is by exposing who she is," Catalina said, her voice urgent and filled with desperation. Laura, her face set with determination, replied, "Catalina, we believe in you, and we won't let Sylvia get away with this. Where do we start?" Ricardo nodded in agreement, offering his legal expertise and connections to aid in the cause. Together, they began crafting a plan to dig into Sylvia's past. Ricardo suggested they begin with her financial records and reach out to former employees who might have insights into her corrupt dealings. With Ricardo's legal acumen, Catalina managed to access old documents from Sylvia's company. What they uncovered was staggering: discrepancies in the financial records that pointed to illegal activities. The first significant lead came from a former accountant who had been dismissed under dubious circumstances. "Sylvia paid witnesses to fabricate stories about you, Catalina. I found proof that she bribed several people, including journalists, to spread these lies," Ricardo revealed, handing over documents that validated his claims. Catalina felt a storm of emotions: rage at the sheer manipulation she had suffered, and relief at finally having tangible evidence to fight back. Yet, she knew they needed more to completely unmask Sylvia. "This is just the beginning. We need something more substantial, something that will expose Sylvia's true character to the world," Catalina declared, her resolve hardening. As the weeks passed, they dug deeper and uncovered more damning evidence of Sylvia's corruption: bribery, financial fraud, and the diversion of funds to secret offshore accounts. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Sylvia was not the upright businesswoman she pretended to be. Catalina realized that these discoveries were their weapon to finally take Sylvia down. "Laura, it's time to bring in some trustworthy journalists. We need to make sure this story is exposed correctly and completely," Catalina said as she and Ricardo pored over the mounting evidence. Laura set to work, contacting journalists she knew would handle the story with integrity. Meanwhile, Ricardo continued to strengthen their case, ensuring they had every detail covered. "Catalina, we have enough to expose Sylvia, but we need to be strategic about how we release it. She's still powerful, and her influence is vast," Ricardo cautioned. "I understand, Ricardo, but we can't wait any longer. We need to do this in a way that leaves no room for doubt. Let's make this public, with the world watching," Catalina replied, her determination unshakable. With everything in place, Catalina prepared for the moment she had been waiting for: the opportunity to clear her name and secure a brighter future for herself and Juan. The plan was set into motion, and the stage was prepared for Sylvia's inevitable downfall. Catalina organized a press conference, ensuring that only trustworthy journalists were invited. On the day of the event, the room was packed with reporters and cameras, all eager to hear what Catalina had to reveal. Standing tall with Laura and Ricardo by her side, Catalina stepped up to the microphone, clutching the incriminating evidence. "Good evening, everyone. I stand before you today to reveal the truth about the baseless accusations that have been made against me and to expose the criminal activities of Sylvia," Catalina began, her voice steady and resolute as she met the gaze of the cameras, ready to bring Sylvia's empire of lies crashing down. Catalina felt a deep sense of dread as the threats began to flood in. What started as anonymous, unsettling comments on social media quickly escalated into direct, vicious messages. Her phone became a conduit for hate, vibrating constantly with emails and calls that dripped with venomous intent. "You've crossed a line, Catalina. You'll regret this," read one message, its words cold and calculated. Another message, more ominous in its tone, warned, "You've picked the wrong fight. Sylvia's reach is far and wide. You won't escape this." The chill that settled in Catalina's bones was impossible to shake. No matter how much she tried to dismiss the threats, the reality of the danger she and Juan were in became undeniable. Her once peaceful home began to feel like a prison. She found herself double-checking the locks on the doors and windows, her heart racing with every creak or unexpected noise. Juan, sensing his mother's unease, stayed close by, his innocent questions piercing Catalina's already frayed nerves. "Mom, why do you look so worried?" he asked, his young face filled with concern. Catalina's fear was not just for herself but for her son. She couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to him because of Sylvia's relentless vendetta. The pressure of it all was overwhelming, but she knew she had to stay strong, for Juan, if not for herself. Ricardo and Laura remained her pillars of support, their concern growing as the situation worsened. "Ricardo, I don't know how much more of this I can take. The threats are becoming more personal and more direct. I'm terrified for Juan," Catalina confessed, her voice trembling. Ricardo, sensing the gravity of the situation, didn't hesitate. We need to involve the authorities, Catalina. Sylvia has crossed a line, and this has gone beyond a personal feud. We have to protect you and Juan at all costs, he urged, his tone leaving no room for argument. The decision to report the threats to the police was made swiftly, but the fear didn't dissipate. The threats continued, each one more hateful and vicious than the last. Some messages were particularly cruel, attacking Catalina's very identity and trying to strip her of any sense of worth. You're nothing but a lowly cleaner. You should have stayed in your place. You deserve nothing but the filth you clean. One message sneered, its words cutting deep into Catalina's spirit. Despite the emotional toll, Catalina knew she couldn't let these threats break her. She was fighting for her dignity, for her son's future, and for the truth to be known. The battle was far from over, but Catalina steeled herself, determined not to let Sylvia's campaign of terror succeed. With Ricardo and Laura by her side, she prepared to face whatever came next, knowing that she had already come too far to turn back now. As Catalina lay in the hospital bed, her body weak and her spirit battered, she couldn't help but feel the weight of everything crashing down on her. The once vibrant woman who had fought so hard for a better life for herself and Juan now felt like a shadow of her former self. The endless cycle of threats, the public shaming, and the pressure from all sides had taken a toll that she could no longer ignore. Each day in the hospital blurred into the next as Catalina struggled to regain her strength. The constant visits from Laura and Ricardo were the only bright spots in her otherwise bleak existence. They sat by her side, offering words of encouragement, holding her hand, and reminding her that she wasn't alone in this fight. Despite their support, Catalina felt a deep sense of despair. She had done everything she could to protect her son and clear her name, yet it seemed like every effort was met with another wave of cruelty and injustice. Laura, I don't know how much more I can take, Catalina whispered one afternoon, her voice barely above a whisper. I feel like I'm drowning, and no matter how hard I try to stay afloat, the current just keeps pulling me under. Laura, her own eyes filled with tears, squeezed Catalina's hand gently. You don't have to go through this alone, Catalina. We're all here for you. And Juan, he needs you to keep fighting. You're his world, and he's yours. That's what you need to hold on to. Ricardo, who had been silently watching the exchange, added softly, Catalina, you're one of the strongest people I know. You've faced unimaginable challenges, and yet you've never given up. This is just another storm to weather. And remember, storms always pass. Despite their reassuring words, the road to recovery was slow and arduous. Catalina's physical health was improving, but the emotional scars were far deeper. Her nights were often filled with nightmares, reliving the worst moments of the ordeal. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sylvia's smug face, heard the hateful whispers of the public, and felt the crushing weight of fear for Juan's future. One morning, after a particularly restless night, Catalina found herself unable to even muster the energy to get out of bed. The thought of facing another day felt unbearable. It was then that Juan, who had been quietly coloring in the corner, approached her bed with a small, folded piece of paper in his hand. Mom, he said softly, his big, innocent eyes full of concern. I made something for you. Catalina forced a smile as she took the paper from him, her heart aching at the sight of her son's worry. She unfolded it to reveal a brightly colored drawing of a flower, simple yet beautiful, with the words, I love you, Mom, written in Juan's careful handwriting. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at the drawing, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. Thank you, my sweet boy, Catalina whispered, pulling Juan into a gentle hug. You don't know how much this means to me. Juan smiled, his little arms wrapped tightly around his mother. You're going to get better, Mom. I know you will. You're the strongest person in the world. Catalina held onto that thought, letting it seep into her soul. Juan's unwavering faith in her, his innocent belief that everything would be okay, was the lifeline she desperately needed. It was for him that she had to keep fighting, no matter how broken she felt inside. Over the next few days, Catalina began to make progress, however small. The support of her friends and the love of her son became the foundation of her recovery. Each step forward was a victory, a sign that she could overcome the darkness that had threatened to consume her. Ricardo and Laura continued to stand by her side, helping her navigate the legal and social battles that still loomed. With their help, Catalina started to see a way out of the nightmare Sylvia had created. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead was still fraught with challenges. But Catalina was slowly rediscovering the strength she had once feared was lost forever. As she held wands drawing close, Catalina made a silent vow. She would not let Sylvia win. She would fight back with everything she had, not just for herself, but for the future she and Juan deserved. And with that determination, Catalina began to reclaim her life, one step at a time. The atmosphere in the event hall grew tense as Catalina's words echoed through the space. The guests, once engrossed in casual conversation and the lavish surroundings, now sat in stunned silence, their eyes locked on Catalina as she revealed the depth of Sylvia's treachery. The weight of the evidence was undeniable, and the sense of anticipation hung thick in the air. As the images of the threatening messages and incriminating bank records flashed on the screen, a murmur of disbelief spread through the crowd. The realization that someone as esteemed as Sylvia could be capable of such malicious deeds began to settle in. Sylvia, once the picture of calm elegance, now felt the walls closing in on her. The mask of confidence she had worn so well was beginning to crack. Catalina, fueled by the months of torment and the desire to protect her son, stood strong. She knew this was her moment, the culmination of all the pain and struggle she had endured. Sylvia, you thought you could silence me, that your wealth and status would protect you from the consequences of your actions. But you were wrong. Tonight, everyone will see the truth, Catalina declared, her voice steady and resolute. Ricardo, who had been quietly supporting Catalina from the sidelines, stepped forward and began distributing copies of the documents to the journalists and key figures in the audience. These documents have been verified by independent experts. They clearly show the payments made to discredit Catalina, the bribes given to manipulate the media, and the trail leading back to Sylvia, Ricardo explained, his tone firm and authoritative. The whispers in the crowd grew louder, with guests exchanging shocked glances and murmurs of astonishment. The journalists eagerly snapped photos and scribbled notes, knowing that this revelation would be the story of the year. Sylvia, her composure now completely shattered, could feel the gazes of judgment turning toward her. She had always been in control, but now, for the first time, she was the one being scrutinized. Desperate to salvage her reputation, Sylvia took a step forward, trying to regain her footing. This is all a lie. Catalina is just a bitter woman trying to ruin me because she couldn't handle her failures. Sylvia spat, her voice tinged with desperation, but the conviction in her words was gone, replaced by a trembling uncertainty that everyone in the room could sense. Catalina didn't flinch. She had prepared for this, knowing that Sylvia would try to deflect and deny it. Sylvia, you can try to twist the truth, but the evidence speaks for itself. The people in this room are not fools. They can see what you've done. You've hurt countless people, all in the name of preserving your image. But tonight, that image is shattered, Catalina replied, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The final blow came when Ricardo presented a video testimony from one of Sylvia's former employees, who had been a key player in orchestrating the threats and bribes under Sylvia's direction. I worked for Sylvia for years, but I can't stay silent any longer. She made me do wrong things that hurt innocent people, and she paid me to cover it up. I can't live with that on my conscience anymore. The employee confessed, his voice filled with remorse. The crowd gasped as the full extent of Sylvia's deceit was laid bare. There was no more denying it. The truth was out, and Sylvia's empire of lies was crumbling before her eyes. Catalina, feeling the weight of the moment, looked around the room, her gaze landing on Sylvia. This isn't just about me. It's about standing up to those who think they can hurt others without consequence. It's about justice, and it's about ensuring that no one else has to suffer like I did. Tonight, we reclaim the truth, Catalina said, her voice filled with a quiet strength that resonated with everyone in the room. Sylvia, now exposed and defeated, could do nothing but watch as the world she had so carefully constructed fell apart. The guests, once her allies, now turned away, disgusted by her actions. The journalists rushed to report the scandal, knowing that Sylvia's downfall was imminent. As the event drew to a close, Catalina felt a sense of closure she hadn't experienced in months. She had faced her worst nightmare and emerged stronger. As she left the stage, Ricardo and Laura joined her, their faces beaming with pride. "You did it, Catalina. You fought back, and you won," Laura said, hugging her friend tightly. Catalina nodded, feeling a deep sense of relief. "Yes, but this victory isn't just mine. It's for Juan, for everyone who has ever been wronged by someone like Sylvia. We didn't just expose a lie. We proved that the truth will always prevail, no matter how powerful the enemy." As they walked out of the event hall, the weight of the past months began to lift from Catalina's shoulders. There would still be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, she felt truly free. Holding Juan's hand, Catalina knew that they were finally on the path to a brighter future, one where justice had been served and the truth had triumphed. As the police escorted Sylvia out of the event hall in handcuffs, the air was thick with a mixture of shock and awe. The reporters continued to capture every moment, knowing they were witnessing the dramatic fall of a once powerful woman. Sylvia's desperate protests echoed in the room, but they fell on deaf ears. The reality of her crimes had been laid bare for all to see, and there was no escaping the justice that had finally caught up with her. Catalina, standing on the stage, felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. The torment, the fear, the sleepless nights, all of it had led to this moment of vindication. Tears welled up in her eyes, not just from relief, but from the overwhelming gratitude she felt toward those who had stood by her. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me, for giving me a chance to tell my story. Today, justice was served, and I can finally protect my son and live in peace." The crowd, moved by Catalina's sincerity and strength, erupted into applause. What began as a few claps quickly grew into a standing ovation. People who had once doubted her now stood in solidarity, applauding not just her victory, but her unwavering courage. As she stepped down from the stage, Laura and Ricardo were there to greet her, their eyes shining with pride and emotion. "Catalina, you've shown the world what true strength looks like," Laura said, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You faced down someone who tried to destroy you, and you emerged victorious," Ricardo added, his voice thick with emotion. Catalina smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't known in a long time. "We did this together," she replied, her voice full of gratitude. "Now we can finally move on, free from fear, and build a future we can be proud of." In the days that followed, the world shifted for Catalina. The media turned her story into one of resilience and triumph, a tale of a woman who had faced overwhelming odds and emerged stronger. Public support flooded in, with people inspired by her journey. Her music career, once on the brink of ruin, saw a resurgence. With Alejandro's guidance, Catalina began working on new projects, and her passion for music reignited. Invitations poured in for her to perform at prestigious events, and the public embraced her with open arms. Each performance was met with standing ovations, her voice now a symbol of hope and perseverance. Meanwhile, Sylvia's world crumbled around her. Her conviction led to the dismantling of her financial empire, leaving her bankrupt and disgraced. The opulence she had once flaunted was stripped away, and the friends who had surrounded her in luxury were nowhere to be found. Sylvia, who had once wielded power and influence, was now isolated and paying the price for her crimes. Catalina, on the other hand, flourished. With Sylvia behind bars, she and Juan were able to live their lives free from fear. They moved forward with a renewed sense of purpose, surrounded by the love and support of true friends like Laura and Ricardo. Catalina's story became an inspiration to many, a reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, will always prevail. As time passed, Catalina's life continued to blossom. She and Juan found happiness and stability, their bond stronger than ever. Catalina knew that the challenges she had faced had made her who she was, and she carried those lessons with her into the future. Each day, she felt more grateful for the freedom and peace she had fought so hard to achieve. In the end, Catalina's story was not just one of revenge or justice, but of triumph over adversity. She had taken on a formidable opponent and emerged victorious, not just in the eyes of the law, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed her journey. With her dignity restored and her future bright, Catalina knew she had earned the happiness she now enjoyed. And as she looked toward the future, she did so with her head held high, ready to embrace whatever came next with the same courage and determination that had carried her through the darkest of times. As we come to the end of this incredible journey, we must reflect on the powerful lessons Catalina's story has taught us. Her resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity, her unwavering determination to seek justice, and the strength she found within herself to overcome every challenge are truly inspiring. What have you learned from Catalina's story? Take a moment to think about one lesson that resonated with you and how you might apply it in your own life. Is it the courage to stand up for what's right, the importance of true friendship, or the strength to keep going when the odds are against you? We'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comments below one thing you've learned from this story and how you plan to put it into practice in your life. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Thank you for watching.